Hi, good afternoon, everyone. May I call upon my other co-panelists to please join me on stage. Karthik from PurpleStream. All right. Rajiv Suri from VuClip. Aditya Bhat from Geo Studios. Dr. Shay David, President and General Manager, Kaltura. Thierry Fautier from Harmonic. And Koby Maluk from Vimmi. Gentlemen, please take your seats and let me quickly introduce my panelists and then I'll start off with the session. So we will have the session opening by Aditya Bhat, who is from Geo Studios. Geo Studios, as some of you know, is a Reliance Jio company. It's an internal content advertising marketing agency. They are responsible for consulting on marketing and content strategies for Jio and its various products in Jio's ecosystem. And he will be kind of presenting a little bit of an overview on what exactly they're doing. Shay David is a scholar and serial entrepreneur who specializes in collaborative and open source information and communication systems. Headquartered in NYC with over 150,000 publishers, universities, and enterprises who have integrated Kaltura's open source video platform. The company is a world leader in the field. So he will also be presenting a few slides on the importance of online video platforms in driving OTT video strategies. Thierry Fautier, a veteran, I would say, in the industry. As Vice President of Video Strategy at Harmonic, he's in charge of defining and driving the execution of the long-term strategy of Harmonic's video business. He's also the current president of the Ultra HD Forum, the global organization responsible for promoting market adoption of UHD. Koby Maluk, OTT video specialist from Vimmi. He brings in 15 years of experience in IPTV and OTT markets, covering all aspects of business development, product design, management, marketing, and so on. And he specializes in all aspects of the solution, CMS, middleware, video CDN, etc. I have Karthik Subramanian, founder and CEO of PurpleStream on our panel. He has got 15 years of work experience in the IT, telecom, and cable TV domain. And he has been in leadership roles in convergence domain for over a decade. So he'll be talking a little bit about what how his solution actually powers a lot of broadcasters' OTT strategies. And last but not the least, Rajiv Suri, SVP for VuClip. He's an avid blogger, very passionate about digital technology. He is responsible for incubating new businesses, and until recently he was CMO, head of marketing at Reliance Jio. And he's going to talk a little bit about how VuClip as an OTT service provider is going to play an important role in next generation OTT video services. Thank you for the audience. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and I hope that everybody else outside this room also share the same enthusiasm as you. I'm an analyst with Frost & Sullivan. I track the media services and technologies market. So the topic for today's panel discussion is OTT. Are we taking it very closer to TV? Has the difference between OTT and TV really blurred? And if not, how far are we from that journey? To open this topic, we have got some perspectives to be presented by Aditya. So Aditya, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, fellow colleagues, a warm welcome. I come from a marketing and content background. I've done about 40 shows on Indian television. I currently lead a group of young enthusiasts team with an average age of 23 years, and I'm the oldest member in my team called Geo Studios. And we're responsible for creating content across platforms. We also do a bit of communication work, but all of us come from content backgrounds, which is content creation on digital, content on television, content with respect to newer technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality and other aspects as well. So being a content and a marketing guy, let me take you, I put together a small 10-slider presentation which talks about the journey or the evolution of content, the way I look at it. I'm going to start off with a Bhalla family, let's say somebody from GK1 from Delhi. And coming to 1989 on Sunday, Bhalla family recently had a television set. It was a black and white TV. They got their friends, colleagues, neighbors around to watch Mahabharat. So all of them were watching Mahabharat. A few years later, they now had a color TV. They also had a cable and satellite TV. And I'm sure 2003 July, they all watched in anticipation Amitabh Bachchan ji's return on television, and they watched KBC. 9 years later, now Bhalla family they not only had one TV, they had two TVs. 2009, Mrs. Bhalla now was watching her favorite show Kumkum Ek Pyara Sa Bandhan in her bedroom set. And 2017, you had everybody, I think the same Bhalla family now is playing KBC along, watching the show on air, along with, thanks to Jio, where they were playing along. The children were actually surfing on YouTube. The girl was actually looking at her, catching her favorite shows on Amazon. So what's really happening is content has evolved. A lot of content is happening and a lot of interesting aspects are happening in terms of content, and I'm sure there's going to be a discussion around it. I'm going to also take you through 5 years later, what could be happening with the same Bhalla family. I'm sure Mr. Bachchan will be back playing KBC. It's just that through augmented reality and holograms, he probably could be playing right in the living rooms, something like this. I'll just show you a small clip. So this is a very popular movie which has been converted from 2D into a 3D space.
Here this evening. Young lady, what's your name?
Mrs. Milwaukee.
And how about your fella here?
Visiting.
All right, let's see what you can do. Take it away.
Yeah, so basically you could actually have Mr. Bachchan right in your living room through AR holograms. He could be actually playing the game with you. So what's happening is mediums of content has evolved. Content probably has not changed too much. We have not experimented too much with content per se. I think the biggest challenge today is technology is obviously going to facilitate the evolution. Brands will play a huge role because ultimately if you need to create content, you need brands to back the content. So advertisers and marketers are going to play a huge role as well. Let's take an example. A Delhi client, Maruti, from 2008 to 2010, Maruti's content on television is actually reduced or has got smaller and smaller. It started from 60 seconds of advertising, went on to 30 seconds. Today there are 5 seconds. And I think a lot of brands also now are saying, let's not do television advertising at all. Let's do interesting content videos. Maruti has done that right from doing a show which I did for them on Star Plus called Jile Har Pal to actually coming out with a full-fledged feature film. So I think content, while advertising is becoming smaller and smaller, content integrations are growing and content is, brands are embedding in content. So to actually try and do interesting content on different platforms, you also need to have an acceptance level of brands. And I think the merging of brands and content is going to happen. Technology is going to play a huge role in this. But what are the challenges? And I'm sure my fellow colleagues and my panelists will be able to kind of guide in terms of what the road lies ahead from a content perspective. When you talk about OTT platform, I think one of the key questions that emerge is how much is too much? What should be the cost of production? How much should we spend? How much would be the recoveries of the monies that we end up spending? What is the right figure? Are we looking at something in terms of lakhs or something in terms of thousands or something in terms of crores? And what would be the recovery? Targeting is important. With today streams of platforms available, so much of content available, who is the audience that we are targeting to? What is the profile of that audience? They say the rule is 1:1. If I spend 1 rupee on production, I need to have a rupee on discovery. how are we going to spend equivalent monies to ensure that our content that we are producing for platforms, be it television or OTT, definitely not more so for OTT because television channels already have an established reach. Marketing that content becomes important. How much of content should I have? Probably do I look at a strategy of a Netflix or an Amazon where I look at a lot of content which I'd syndicate and acquire and look at 1 or 2 shows a quarter as original content? What should be the right strategy? So these are some of the questions I believe that we will seek answers to going forward, and I thought I'll actually end up my basic introduction by saying that with a quote which says, to live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. And that's how we can embark on this journey of trying to create interesting ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aditya. So Aditya really did put out some interesting ideas, of how we might possibly see Amitabh Bachchan in our room virtually. Now, how practical is that? I'm going to have Shay come up on stage and share some perspectives on how he feels. Is India ready for this or not?
Hi, everybody. My name is Shay, and I'm one of the co-founders of Kaltura, and I'm the GM and president of our media business. And we have the very tough task of going kind of right after lunch. So I see people are a little tired today. So we're going to try, I'm going to try and make it a little bit of interesting and maybe show you some stuff. Aditya talked to us about the importance of content. And in our industries, there's an old saying that content is king, right? You've all heard that before. I'll tell you, because we're among friends here, I'll tell you the biggest secret of TV. Whether you call it IPTV or converged TV or OTT TV, the biggest secret is this. When people come to watch TV, whether they open it on the big screen or the small screen, you know what they want to do? They want to watch TV, right? And in that sense, content is king. If there's nothing to watch, if the content is not what they want to watch, they're going to close it, regardless of whether it's on an iPad or an Android on YouTube, or whether it's a big screen, or whether it's time-shifted TV or whatnot. The content is king. At the same time, we often talk about how distribution is the queen, right? The king cannot do without the queen. What people often fail to understand is that if the content is king and distribution is queen, we like to think about the platform as the castle that defends the king and the queen. So you need platforms to be able to deliver the types of content, and you need to be able to support the distribution using platforms. And the transition that we have from one small screen in the living room into multiple screens in the home, into a screen in every pocket, there's an underlying fundamental shift and convergence, and it's very fitting for having this discussion in Convergence India. There's a shift that has to happen from a technology perspective in order to make this a reality. So the shift is driven by an underlying technological shift from traditional broadcast technologies into IP. Right? Again, the first few slides is nothing that's going to surprise anybody. This is data that probably comes from the same report. Everybody's reading the Cisco report every year. But over 80% of the traffic on networks today is already driven by video, 82% by 2021. There are 11 billion connected video devices around the world. Probably, I would, by a quick estimate, probably at least 1 billion of those devices are going to be here in India. So India is a very big driver. Between India and China, probably a quarter of the worldwide consumption connected devices just between India and China. And it's not just a IP transition, it's also a transition into mobility. 78% of the traffic is on mobile devices. Again, this is all well-known information. So the world of TV is transforming, right? And for the longest time, you'd go to conferences like this, I do this for a living, and people would kind of have their head in the sand, right? Saying, oh, that transition is a long time away. Even the title of this panel today is, do we see convergence between OTT and traditional TV? In my mind, there's no question mark at the end of that sentence. We are seeing complete convergence between OTT, IPTV, and traditional TV. And it's time that we get our hand out of that sand. And let me describe to you a little bit of what's driving that convergence and that transition. We can talk, I call this slide 100 years of TV. We can talk about 4 distinct stages in the evolution of television. The first one was broadcast television. And these are a lot of statistics from the US market. The world market is pretty similar, only maybe shifted by a few years forward. The first stage is broadcast television. The big winners in that were the networks. In many countries, that was a kind of channel one, a government-based networks. In some other countries like the US, it was more private networks. But those in the US would be ABC, CBS, NBC. In the UK, that would be the BBC. Those are very household familiar names because the people that had an early advantage and built those networks in the late 1940s, 1950s, in some other countries in the 60s and 70s, became household names, became very large businesses. What is potentially lesser known is that there were enablers enabling that transition. Namely, in the US, this was Westinghouse. Westinghouse had, among other things, very strong patents around FM broadcast and later around television. The second era of TV happened in the late 80s, 1990s, in some other countries, maybe well into the 2000s. And that was the era of Satco and Cableco. People have dug the street, built coax cable into the ground, and there's a next generation of providers. Sky, DirecTV, Comcast in the US, and then global media brands that became enabled only in the era of cable, namely HBO, right? Again, lesser known as a set of enablers enabling that, companies like NDS, like Scientific Atlanta, people that had built the security, the set-top boxes, the enabling technology around that. That was the second phase. The third phase came with the rapid acceleration of the internet in the early 2000s and in more emerging markets well into today, with the rise of pure OTT players, right? Of course, Netflix and iTunes and YouTube represent the consumer-facing aspects of that. And then again, lesser known but enablers, companies like Akamai that are powering the global infrastructure in order to run that type of globalization. Of course, we mentioned Amazon as a good example. Amazon plays both in the consumer-facing but also Amazon Web Services and the cloud infrastructure as enablers. The question I want to put back to you, and the panel is going to discuss that in a few minutes, is we're entering the fourth phase of television. And in that fourth phase, I call that the age of connected entertainment, or the age of converged television, if you will. And in that age, every one of those 11 billion devices becomes a TV screen. So with our premise that content is king, and with our observation that there are 11 billion screens for potential distribution, now the question becomes, how do we get that content into each and every one of those devices? And I think that some of the fellow panelists here on the panel represent the platforms, right? There are a lot of enabling technology that need to happen in multiple layers of the stack, starting from the encoding and transcoding all the way to the storage, the distribution, the platform play, etc. So our mission at Kaltura is a 12-year-old company, and our mission is to become the technology enabler for the connected entertainment era. And I think that a few of the key principles that we operate, and I'm going to run quickly because I only have 10 minutes and I'm probably out of 7 already. The principles by which we design this system, the principles by which I suggest we think about the problem are as follows. This is an audience-driven formula, right? We said content is king. How do we enable distribution? How do we create a platform that enables both of those? It's essential to understand that we need to think about the audience first. So I want to watch what I want, where I want, and what I want. Again, remember the premise I'm starting with. When people open their TV, what they want to do is watch TV. The second principle is that people only want to pay for what's right for them, right? For years, people have been locked into very big bundles. And today we're talking about the era of the skinny bundle. People only want to pay for what they consume. The third principle is that the personal device requires a personalized experience. In traditional TV, regardless of who you were, regardless of what you watched last night, regardless of your age, regardless of your location, everybody would watch the same, maybe on a regionalized basis. And the last one is that TV, by nature, is a social activity. And I want to be able to have social engagement. So for years, people talked about a second screen. Now we're talking about a converged social experience that feeds into the main experience. And last but not least, of course, we want to be able to consume that type of experience on any device. So the shift of IP video in India is already starting, right? Jio, Aditya here represents Jio, but Jio obviously, as everybody knows, developed the world's fastest growing 4G network and has a very robust offering for GeoTV. Other providers are responding to that. So there's been a launch of OTT services. Amazon is here, Netflix is here. Netflix is going around the world talking about how India is at the core of Netflix's next 100 million subscribers. And then international OTT services are all aiming to localize the content. We know that both Amazon and Netflix are producing a lot of local content and sucking a lot of the talent in this market. So this shift is already obviously started and it's accelerating. We think that the opportunity is huge. And in order to capture that opportunity, we want to think about 3 different aspects that are necessary to capture it. And those are infrastructure, business, and experience. For a platform or a set of platforms to be able to capture the opportunity that exists in that space of connected entertainment, the first and foremost, we need infrastructure. We need to make sure that when people click play, it actually is going to play. So it's a system around being able to transcode and host and stream and secure the content for every device. That's one very significant area of investment. The second is the business models for the providers, and many of the people here in the room represent the providers. The capability to turn this into a business, because this infrastructure is expensive, the content is expensive, you need to have a business model around it. So the capability to support ad-supported models, subscription-supported models, transaction-supported models, you need to have systems in place to support it. And last but not least, and we all saw the principles in the last slide, the capability to drive specific experiences. That means the capability to understand that there are multiple types of viewers, that an experience on a tablet is different than on a phone, is different on a big screen. And that everything needs to be personalized. I have another minute? How much time do I have? Exactly a minute more. So I'll just talk about a couple of examples that we've seen around the world. Kaltura focuses mostly on kind of the tier 1 providers. Here in India, we power VuT, tremendous engagement metrics. I'm not going to share specific information. Let me just say that we've had 75 million different downloads of the apps, mostly driven by Android, so just tens of millions of active monthly users. And you can see that maybe it's a little hard to read, but we're talking about both VOD and on-demand, and we go with the biggest brands around the world, with the HBOs and Viacoms and Vodafones of the world in order to power that for both on-demand, VOD, advertising, subscription support. I'm showing this slide not to just name drop the logos, but to show that there's quite a lot of robustness around the market, with people needing to be able to support all of those sorts of kind of different business models. And what we want to do is to be able to partner with those bigger brands and be able to power those experiences now and into the future. I think the challenge, and this would be my last slide, you can see a couple of screenshots here of the VuT experience that we have on the left, and many of you, I'm sure, use this at home. You can see some examples of the last Oscars that we did for Turner. The challenge in this entire ecosystem is to be able to remember that the content needs to stay at the center, that the consumer needs to stay at the center, that the platform needs to go into the background, at the same time to create a super engaging consumer experience, right? If you can do all of that, you can go back to that business of the layer of the business and actually turn converged OTT, converged IP, converged traditional TV into a good business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shay. So before I go to the next scene, just a bit of a context. I'm an analyst and I would like to share some numbers with you. We recently published a couple of reports on the pay TV services market in India as well as the over-the-top video services market in India. And what a fantastic growth we have seen in online video viewership in the last couple of years. 2015, when we did the report, the number of viewers was 72 million, and then they grew to about 180 million as of last year. And we see growth, it could be either growing at the rate of 24% or has potential to grow at a CAGR of 55%. So it's just fantastic numbers. But in such an ecosystem, what I'm finding is there's a different way of looking at the business. Because then it's not as if the broadcasters are fighting with the Facebooks of the world actually for the viewership. But the entire ecosystem is today struggling to and vying for the digital wallet and digital audience, digital attention. What I mean by that is, today now if you've got the phone in your hand, some of you are looking at a video, but you're also looking at an e-commerce platform like Amazon. you're buying something, you're looking at a news portal, so on and so forth. So what is the extent of time somebody can actually spend watching video, whether it's on digital or whether on television? But before we discuss that further, I'm going to call Thierry to come and talk a little bit old school style on, are we even ready for this conversation? He's going to talk about breaking the myths around OTT, TV, how they are different from each other. So Thierry, over to you.
Thank you, Vidya. So maybe before we start to dive into this OTT discussion, I wanted to share with you what is OTT and really explain from a network and delivery architecture what is OTT. So first, Harmonic, for those who don't know, is a premium video delivery and cable edge technology leader with a revenue about 360 million last year. We are serving, of course, broadcaster, service provider, and content provider. And of course, we took the OTT train probably 10 years ago, and I see still a lot of activity in that space. So in terms of customer base, we have, of course, a lot of service providers and content providers. There are big operators in India who are in this room I cannot mention, but we're also powering a lot of Indian OTT deployments. So let's look at the past, and I won't go to 1930. I will just go to last 10 to 15 years. You had operators building a broadcast headend, going to a quality of service IP network most of the time, or satellite, and going to a set-top box. At that time, the life was quite simple. Then came the OTT guys, the Netflix, the Amazon, who built basically an OTT adaptive bitrate technology and use the public internet to deliver over managed network of operators who are seeing people spending less time on their application and more time on OTT service providers. So this is where the fight was starting. Then, in reaction to that, the broadcaster built what they call TV everywhere, which is my content across the public internet, my network or other network, depending if you are wired network, and then in basically reaction to the OTT service providers, they build their own OTT platform based on their own content. And I think we see about maybe 20 to 30% today of pay TV subscriber activating this TV everywhere service. Are we done? No, because what we saw is operators who were classically doing, let's say, IP multicast are now migrating to ABR technology because they want to target all the device. This is what we call bring your own device, and Harmonic is helping those operators with our VOS platform to migrate from classical IP multicast to ABR technology in order to offer their service not only on set-top box, but on any connected device. And then at the end of the day, you can see that operators and OTT operators are all going to the same device. And I think we are going probably to discuss here who is going to fight in terms of quality of experience, type of programming, and hopefully more revenue for all of them. So my only slide to pitch what we are doing. OTT obviously brings a lot of challenges, but people are expecting broadcast experience on an OTT network. We have some challenges on the quality of experience on wireless network, being wireless operator or Wi-Fi in the home. And of course, we need to control the cost of delivery. There is no free lunch. And on top of that, you need to be able to address all the devices. There's no more my set-top box. It's all the possible devices that you can find in the home. And of course, for that, you need to have a first-class video solution. And that's what we are working very hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thierry. So let me start off with Koby before we have the round of questions. But Koby, of course, I did introduce you. So, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and your perspective on the topic today?
Thank you, Vidya. a short introduction. My name is Koby Maluk. I am sales director at Vimmi Communications, which is an end-to-end OTT video platform. Started the business around 17 years ago when IPTV was still was a very exciting and sexy buzzword, and over the top was the name of a very bad movie of Sylvester Stallone, if you are familiar with this movie. During the 7 years, I was holding the two parts of the equation. I was both in the vendor side, doing lots of roles there, and also in the I acted as CTO of two operators, TV operators in Israel. My company is based in Israel, and yeah, so that's pretty much my experience. I also had my own startup, which also relates to this topic that we are here, which combines interaction and OTT video by adding a virtual audience to watch live content and adding them in a virtual space so they can interact while they're watching things together, increasing the engagement quite significantly. So this is my perspective, 360 degrees, I believe. Still, as representing Vimmi, I would like to touch mostly the technical part. I think that OTT, the subject of this panel is about whether OTT can replace TV. So at least from technical perspective, I think that if I was a person that doesn't like panels, so I could just finish it by saying, yes, of course, it's going to replace it. It actually replaces it already in any kind of aspect, whether it's technology-wise, cost-wise. I think that there is a big fight today between vendors, especially if you take India, for example, who are specializing by decreasing the cost of the platforms to the minimum of the minimum. So there is a big fight today between the vendors, and the prices became very low. So in terms of cost, it's quite, we're already there. The OTT platform now is one of the cheapest platforms to provide TV. So that's in terms of cost. I think that the only gap that is still there is technology. I think Thierry, you touched it. You referred to that mostly in terms of live video. Still, there is an inherent delay today when watching content, mostly sports. If you have cable subscribers, neighbors, so they're going to see the goal around 30 seconds before you will see the goal, and it makes you wonder whether there was a goal or you don't know what exactly happened. So this is one thing that, for example, Vimmi is addressing, is a low latency CDN that tries to reduce the delay to less than 2 seconds. And I think that also in terms of mobile operators, to deliver the video over mobile networks is still a challenge. And so we're also addressing this by implementing multi-access edge computing. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but at the end of the day, is just pushing the content very close to the eNote Bs, to the end devices, without loading the heart of the mobile system, the mobile network. So, just to sum it up from my perspective, OTT is going to replace. I think it's already replacing. Some gaps are still there in terms of technology. Again, I'm not talking about content at the moment. The gaps are mostly technology-wise, and it's about 1 year to get to the point where I think OTT would be the most efficient, cost-effective, and also the best performance and quality platform to deliver video.
Thank you, Koby. So I'll move to Rajiv. Um, Rajiv, you're the user of technology, and Koby says, well, we've almost replaced TV, right? So you're an aggregator of content. Tell us a little bit about VuClip and what's your perspective on the topic.
Thank you. Let me start with the central question. The question is, will OTT replace TV, right? OTT kya TV ko maar dega? That's a question that we all want to get a clear answer to. To me, the answer to that question is a little bit of an and rather than an or, right? And let me just explain that a little bit more. See, if you think about India, so let me ask you a simple question. How many of you are from Delhi here in this room? Kitne log Delhi se hain? Right? Now you see, it's less than a third of the audience that are from Delhi here, right? As a nation, we are a very diverse nation. We've got, 14 languages that are having more than 50 million people each, right? And that's the kind of scale that you're talking. OTT and TV are like that. दोनों एक साथ रहेंगे अगले 5-10 साल तक. It is not a problem. You don't need to worry about the fact that they're going to continue to survive and thrive, and they're going to happen together with each other. But the future clearly lies in the on-demand ecosystem. See, the power of on-demand is you're being able to choose what content you want to watch as compared to somebody else telling you what content you have to watch. To me, that's the phase shift that's already happening in the world today, and that's something that's going to be driven by the future. आगे की कहानी वहीं पे जाएगी, right? So the key question here is, if that's the direction, if that's the story that we are going to go towards, what are the key things that are happening in the market today that we need to watch out for, right? I think the one thing that has happened already, thanks to the telecom ecosystem, is Jio ने अभी अफीम की आदत तो लगा दी है, right? So you think about the the broadband revolution that has happened in the country over the last 3 years, right? Heroin has started to reach the public already, right? So the data heroin is already in the hands of every individual right now in the world, in the country right now, right? But that heroin has to take shape in terms of more and more video. For that, there will be a fixed line revolution that's coming. And the fixed line revolution is more in your hands than it is in hands of Jio, right? Cable TV operators or MSOs ही कर सकते हैं ये, क्योंकि this is about home revolution, home broadband, and that's something that only you guys can do, right? Once you're able to build that story, on top of that sits the OTT ecosystem which is coming through, right? To my mind, that is really the future, and I think, as I said, we are an inclusive nation, Bharat Mata ki Jai and all that good stuff, and we are going to make that story work. In terms of what kind of content is working, very quickly, if I can take a second, it's more about content that at this point in time, what is working is basically content that you can't show on TV. क्योंकि TV में censorship बहुत है, तो obviously गाली गलोच दिखानी है. Those are the kinds of things that you want to do. You try and throw that kind of stuff out there and elsewhere. So that's the kind of content that used to be where the OTT ecosystem was, but that's rapidly changing because you now have mass niche that is happening. So you got niches that you can try and target across the ecosystem, and those niches are getting better and better, and that's where content is going to spread. And I think Aditya perhaps talked a little bit about that, but that space, whether it's AR, VR, other pieces that are coming, those are going to be the bloat sellouts in the future, but they will not be rockstar Amitabh Bachchan stories anymore. All of them will make a lot of money, but they'll all be smaller, but they will be targeting deep pieces, and there'll be a lot of addiction in those pieces. That is where the future is going.
Superb. Thank you, Rajiv. Karthik, over to you. I think the difference between TV and OTT for a layperson is TV is by appointment, television. And you've done a lot of work with broadcasters who are also trying to get their OTT stories out. So tell us a little bit about what PurpleStream does and your perspective on this.
Thanks, Vidya. What PurpleStream does is we provide TV everywhere as a solution for broadcasters and OTT service providers. We provide turnaround as a service, IP digitization, encoding, transcoding, transmuxing, and multi-CDN as a service offering. So to answer the second part of your question, how I see the OTT transforming, or whether the TV will get replaced by OTT, I would second Rajiv. So it's an or rather than an and. It's an and rather than an or. He rightly picked up on the point where it was basically for uncensored or non-censored content. But I would say that Jio completely transformed the way people are consuming the video content. The TV everywhere is now a telco TV kind of a concept. And more and more, this is going to get into a wall garden mode where people will produce content for OTT for a very, very specific set of audience. And OTT will not be in general for entertainment alone. It will be for any kind of a domain. That's my take. So the challenges here would be, as he rightly pointed out, if we have the fixed line broadband revolution happening, thanks to our cable MSOs, I feel that we can actually have a much larger penetration at the TV level.
Perfect. Thank you, Karthik. Now it's your turn. So let me ask you about 2-3 questions. So how many of you have watched a video on your phone today? Can I have a show of hands? Superb. Okay. How many of you have got a OTT app which is not YouTube? Show of hands. How many of you have 2 or more of those apps? Okay. How many of you are paying for the OTT service on your phone every month? Not bad. So about 50% of the viewers. Okay. So perfect. So this is for real, guys, right? So let's talk a little bit about the business side of things. One is, of course, can OTT replace television, or can it become hybrid TV? Can infrastructure support is all one thing. Let's talk a little bit about business. So you both started to talk about on-demand content, how a lot more customized content is going to come out. Aditya, do you agree with them? What is the extent of opportunity you see in OTT? Because when we see as analysts, the numbers are still small. It is still about 1/5 of television.
Okay. Let me first tell you about, I think what Jio has done, and everyone spoke about Jio, and I'm feeling very proud and great to be a part of Jio. I think Jio has really got happiness. It's firstly got happiness to the country because India was lingering post 50 in terms of data consumption in the world, and now we are number 1. So we are the world's largest consuming data. And I think Jio has done that. Jio has managed to get YouTubes and Facebook happy because their access has grown magnifold thanks to Jio and thanks to the schemes that Jio had, and people really started consuming data as like water in that sense, and data was available in abundance. Jio has made the advertisers happy because there are newer modes of opportunities even for advertisers to tell their stories in an interesting manner as well, which can go beyond the 30 seconds of television. And obviously, Jio has made the consumers very happy as well, because voice calling has become free, and today data also is at a cost which is a steal as compared to anywhere else in the world. While I agree that it's definitely an and not an or, but I don't agree that only edgy content is something that is going to be working at this point of time. I'd like to cite an example of a show which was on television called Sarabhai versus Sarabhai. I was in Star TV. I launched Star 1 when we actually had that show, and that show now has come back on Hotstar. And it was well received, I believe. A lot of loyalists of TV who were missing the show on television actually watched, and that was not any kind of content which was censored or edgy. So I think there are multiple niches that will exist. There are multiple opportunities for content creators. If you actually see YouTube or Facebook, there's so many home videos, and today to become a chef, you don't need to go to a training or a finishing school. You can actually become, somebody can actually become a cook or a chef by actually watching these videos as well. So the opportunities of developing content are immense. It's not just going to be voyeuristic content. It's going to be content across genres. But as I said, I think with so much of content, discovery is going to be a key. Marketing that content is going to be a key as well.
No, absolutely. Let me go to Shay. So, what we've seen is that, spectacular growth. We just saw, for the show of hands, a number of people who have, I wouldn't say switched, but who also have other OTT apps to access beyond YouTube. But we still see this as an AVOD country. So, from your perspective, when you compare other countries, do you see that there is potential for SWOT to grow like really rapidly here? Or do you think that's going to take time?
So
you work with VuT, and VuT is primarily an AVOD.
Correct.
application.
So I think it's two different parts of this answer. So one of the things that we're hearing for a lot of content providers is that they're very interested in the Indian expat community. There's a lot of Indians that live in higher ARPU countries, and there's an opportunity, particularly in the regionalized content, to be able to provide a subscription service and to bring regionalized Indian content to the rest of the world based on subscription. I think we're going to start seeing those services launch very quickly. On the subscription services, I think that you need to be able to offer very clear value add. People are used to free-to-air channels, and they're used to watching ads. So by default, when you take from linear TV to OTT, you're going to get that. And AVOD, and it's fine. I think that the advertisers need to get used and comfortable with it. There's a lot of issues with brand safety. And if you can solve that, you're going to start seeing CPMs rise and AVOD become a viable business model. And I think Aditya would agree to that. But at the same time, there's an opportunity not only to do ad buyout for people that don't like the ads and to be able to pay a subscription service in order to not be able to be troubled by the ads. That's option one. But there's also a lot of opportunities for personalization, for behind the scenes, for exclusive content, for time windows of that exclusive content, and I think there's a trade. So I don't think we're ever going to see the number of subscribers on the SVOD services equal, even in an order of magnitude, of AVOD, but I definitely think that we're going to start seeing SVOD services launch within the Indian market very soon.
Superb. We'll talk a little bit about OTT in a bit, but you know, everybody is talking about this real converged reality and hybrid services. So I would like to have, Thierry, your views on, when you look at Comcast Xfinity in the US, right? To an extent, they are a converged service, truly, because you know you get access to the content no matter what platform you're on. But a lot of media companies still have different divisions for OTT, digital versus television, right? In your perspective, where are we in India today? And how difficult is it actually to build that kind of a service?
Okay, so first I would like to break some dreams. The reason Netflix exists today with 100 million subscribers is just because the content provider and service provider community were stuck on the VOD model. If Comcast, Time Warner, AT&T had decided to do SVOD, there would not be any Netflix. First, so you need to learn. You know what happened in other countries. If you don't do anything, the OTT guys from outside India will come and license your own content to your own subscribers. First lesson. Second, I think the Indian market is very different from the US market just because one thing. The broadband penetration is very low, and you have to get broadband through your mobile operator, which is good and bad. It means that if you don't have a good infrastructure, you cannot deploy an OTT service. Its method is expensive, so people don't like to spend money. If you look to what happened in the US, mobile operators are offering OTT service, and they use what is called zero rating. Do people know what zero rating is? So zero rating is content provider makes a deal with network operator, and it lets him cap the traffic to SD resolution so that the content can be consumed unlimited. With this, content can be consumed twice more, and operators are using less traffic on their network. So I think you need to understand all those new business practices, and that would be my recommendation for the Indian operators. Not to sit, not to wait, but like Geo is showing you, be aggressive, be proactive, developing a network, a service, and then you will be in business. At least we can meet next year.
Okay, Karthik, you've been in every part of that business, right? So tell him how easy or difficult it is. You know, he was saying he's shattering the dreams. Are the dreams shattered already? Just tell him that.
So my observation is home content in your home country has to go with a AVOD model. Home content on to your expat will actually go on a subscription VOD. So this is the trend what I see in the Indian perspective. So zero rating is something which Jio is doing in a completely different way. So Jio is actually offering TV everywhere, which was a premium offering from several OTT players who were aggregators earlier, who were offering the same TV everywhere packs. I would say that the telco, let me not keep telling Jio, the telcos are killing that model. The aggregation model is dead. So TV everywhere is bundled with the basic subscription of your mobile. And why they do it is because they need to actually have some validation for the data pack. So clearly it is moving from voice to data to understand that pattern. And thanks to Jio again, this is the model which is now getting very, very popular among the APAC telcos as well. So more and more it is going to be, as I said earlier, it's going to be walled garden by the telcos. and you will have a bundled pricing, which will be done by the telcos. So indirectly, people are going to pay for the content, but it is not just going to be charged for content. It's all going to be bundled.
You know, so much riding on the poor backs of the poor telcos, of course. Maybe Reliance is not poor, but many of them are. But Rajiv, I wanted to just pull you in for this. You know, you had raised an interesting point in our discussion before, right? Most of India's consumption today is on mobile broadband. But for something like this to truly succeed in as much critical mass as television, you need fixed broadband to really accelerate, right? So tell us a little bit about how is it in Hong Kong, developed countries like Hong Kong, and what can really change around here?
Thank you, Vidya. You just stole my thunder and my key lines. Right? Anyway, so let me rain a little on the Geo parade, right? Because I was also a part of Geo, so I want to just sort of make sure that we are understanding what Geo cannot do. Any mobility network has got a constraint, and that constraint is it has to provide carpet coverage, right? It has to work here, it has to work in Pragati Maidan, and it has to work in Gurgaon, and it has to work in Dwarka. If it doesn't work all across, then the network is of no use, right? So mobility providers generally tend to optimize for coverage rather than for consistency or reliability. That's the challenge that you will always have, because there's a fixed finite amount of money that you'll have to spend on this, right? Whereas when you have video consumption, it's all about data consumption, right? You know, when you put content on a TV and start watching it, your consumption on a monthly basis is 200 GB, 150 GB, very easily, right? At Hong Kong, as Vidya was saying, my parent company, PCCW, runs the largest fixed line network, the largest OTT platform, and the largest mobility network. We are seeing something like 400 GB per month of consumption per home, right? 400 GB. That's the kind of scale that you're talking about. And we Indians are voracious consumers. Bollywood yahan pe hai, wahan pe nahi hai, right? So just imagine what that means to us once this data becomes abundant, right? So to my mind, that's the kind of scale that we are talking about in terms of where we are going from a data consumption. So the thing is, I come back to the same point. Actually, the key to the OTT fixed line revolution is not on this side, it's on that side of the table. It's with you guys, the MSOs and the LCOs, that are actually going to make this storyline happen, because that consistency of giving 400 GB cannot be done by the mobility boys. It has to be done by the fixed line boys, and that's elsewhere. You already have 140, 150 million connections that are going into the household. घर के अंदर जो तार जाता है वो सिर्फ आपका है और किसी का हो ही नहीं सकता, right? And that's the reason why it is going to be so powerful and so sexy, and that's the reason why it will succeed. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Rajiv. Koby, I'm going to repeat that question I asked Thierry earlier. Okay, when we talk about this hybrid TV, truly converged TV, is it possible? I mean, are you seeing any best cases, use cases, even internationally, that are really working well? Where, you know, OTT is residing on the same platform as television, live and on demand, seamlessly being delivered to a consumer, or not yet?
I have to say that it's, first of all, there are a lot of opportunities where you see hybrid, request for hybrid solutions. One of them is in the south, in Sri Lanka, for example. They just launched an RFP about that. But I have to say that, and I'm getting back to what I've said before, OTT is of course, is a way of consuming content and this kind of stuff, but actually it's just an infrastructure. And it's just a way of streaming video, as cable, as satellite. And if we will find a way that OTT would be superior in all of the other aspects, such as price, such as feature set, and feature set, we are already there. We are actually past already all the feature set that the traditional TV can offer. OTT can offer much more than that. We have the data. We can know that each user that stays on a specific movie page for more than 20 seconds and then regrets and doesn't want to watch the movie, we know about it and we can push it to him afterwards proactively. So it's kind of creepy in a way. So we have the data, we have all the feature set, the prices are quite low. I don't see hybrid as something that will stay for long. I mean, anyone who would already have infrastructure like cables, of course, they will not throw up they will not throw the cable infrastructure. But any new player or any player that wants to be new or wants to add the new feature set that OTT can offer will just go for that anyway. So from my understanding, Coexisting is just a temporary stage before it will just take over.
Okay. Okay. So even in that temporary phase, let me get back to you, Aditya. Now, from the content side, right? One of the important things that I find is happening in the OTT market as OTT service providers want to differentiate themselves is curation of content, right? Because OTT gives an opportunity for producers, content producers across all genres. So tell us a little bit about, what are the good ways in which you can curate content? Is there, because it's not like YouTube. You cannot have everybody coming onto your bandwagon, right? When you are a service provider wanting to have a good mass, good quality mass of paying subscribers, what kind of content do you do?
There's one rule in making content, which is that there are no rules. I think it's a lot of trial, a lot of error, a lot of ways of which you can actually try out some content, and as Koby also said, that you get real-time data, so you know what's working, you know what's not working, so you can actually experiment a lot. So I think curation is easier than actually creating original content, because in curation you can get real-time data. And so, for example, if you're actually having some of kids' content, so you have some animations, or you have some Japanese animation dubbed in Hindi, you know exactly how well they're being consumed, where are they being consumed, how long have they been consumed. So, and then it's easier for you to plan your curation strategy. The tougher part is to try and create original content, because that's where you're actually putting money on your table without knowing how the recoveries are going to be happening, and what is going to be working and what's not going to be working. So curation, I believe, is slightly easier, because if you're actually buying out a library based on what your target audience is, but pushing your the boundaries and trying to create original content becomes slightly more difficult, in my view.
Perfect. Do you have any views on that, Rajiv?
Yeah, so just maybe connecting the two threads together. On one hand, we're going to have an abundance of content. And Aditya mentioned earlier that the one thing that is rising is the cost of discovery. One of the challenges is that there's too much content, right? How do you find it? How do you personalize? And I think that gives you ample motivation to actually accelerate the transition into an IP-only network because of the data. The joke is that the data is the new oil, right? You want to be able to mine that oil and to put more of the spring wells into the ground. So there's also another cost benefit, which is the hybrid solution requires the service providers to run two systems in parallel. And in some cases, being able to run traditional QAM network actually impedes the capability to sell data services on the network. So the service providers on one hand has to run two parallel backends. On the other hand, they're using the infrastructure, it's consuming part of the capacity. So they have a lot of motivation. If you add to that the problem of abundance of content, which could be solved by data mining, it creates motivation. We see that in our work. We do a lot of work with Vodafone, for example, not here in India, but in many other Vodafone markets. So there's actually an accelerated trend of people actually throwing away the cable infrastructure. An experience for consumers to come in and trade an old cable box. They get a new box. In this case, they call it Vodafone TV. Looks like an Apple box. They trade in their old set-top box and they transition to an all-IP network. And this is beginning to happen at scale in some countries, and I anticipate it's going to come to this market soon.
You earlier mentioned that, when you're working with VoT, you've seen such spectacular numbers. You've shared that with the audience, right? Mm-hmm. Are you ready as a vendor for managing that scale?
We are, and we're relying on a series of partnerships on the cloud. So our partner here in the Indian market is Amazon AWS. I think that the cloud offers tremendous potential for scale, and that the different cloud vendors help us manage that scale. You have to understand the scale of an operation like that. It's hundreds of thousands of hours of content that is being added by many terabytes of data every month, every day. There's dozens of hours. VoT, it's no secret, operates 17 or 18 different channels, and all that content is coming on a daily basis into the network. Anything that goes in live linear becomes automatically available for VOD. So it's a problem that is designed to be at scale and designed to be solved at scale. And I think that being able to think about cloud scale as an underlying design principle prepares you for that scale. The entire ecosystem would collapse if it couldn't handle live linear scale TV.
And we have seen many instances of also, a lot of live streaming not taking off, or especially sports events and things like that. So I'm going to ask you, Thierry, because you said, we obviously, evidently do have inadequate broadband, high-speed broadband. And, even TRI has put out a paper a couple of years ago saying that even 3G subscribers sometimes get only 10 kbps speed. So in those kind of circumstances, what type of good advanced technologies can actually make video work?
Okay. So first, I would like to give you what's happening in Europe or in US. By law, by 2020, if you do not provide 20 to 25 megabit per second as an operator, you will be fined per subs per day. I know in India this is not happening, but I think this is a huge difference. You can walk away with a broadband connection at 256 kilobits per second, while in US you will see 200 megabits per second happening this year. So there's a factor 1,000. It's huge. It's disruptive. Technology-wise, let's talk about the rich country. We have a poor country problem. United States. Broadband in rural area is very poor. So the telcos have lost millions of subs. What they are going to do, they are going to install 5G, fixed wireless infrastructure. They will give you 100 megabits per second, nothing to dig. I think this can happen in India in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, but Thierry, even in the US, for instance, in August, September, when we had this famous boxing match that was, streaming, even there, a lot of the streaming providers faced a problem. A lot of users were not able to actually watch the content in great quality. So what happens when you say, oh, there's such great broadband access?
Yes.
Why does it fail then?
So if you look at the Super Bowl, which is the last big event, I think 100 million home watching on TV and 3 million stream.
So it's not that big, right, when you take it as a percentage of
But
TV?
at this stage, 3% network is choked. Core network, CDN network, access network. So OTT cannot scale by construction. 100% of users on OTT, there is no business model for that. So I think broadcast is still an efficient way. Unicast is not scalable. Therefore, you need alternative technology like ABR multicast, which is being defined by Cable Labs and now DVB. I was one of the one to push that inside DVB because the telco were not very happy with what we have. And of course, you have hybrid. Look what happened in France. TF1, number one broadcaster, is asking money to service providers. What do? First, they shut down the service. They say, we don't give you money. You are a public broadcaster. Second, they will say to people, you can take your antenna and watch your content on the broadcast network. So I think we need to be pragmatic and not dogmatic. I'm talking like my new president, Mr. Macron, who understands coming here next weekend. But you have to be smart. If you can't scale, I was listening to the story of the delay. So you have a nice solution for that, but CMAF, MPEG has defined a way to bring the delay of OTT at broadcast level. We have customers knocking at our door every day asking for this type of functionality. So we need to make it right. Customer, when they watch TV, they want to have a broadcast experience. They don't care if it's OTT or if it's broadcast. So I think there are many parameters. There's not a single way to skin the cat, but I think for India, there is a good future to keep the satellite and the cable. And of course, cable operators want to convert to DOCSIS and make it IP on an Apple TV box, but somebody has to pay. At $1 per month, I think you have a slight business model problem.
Vidya, if I could add that?
Yes.
I think there are lots of initiatives that are already happening in India. I think we have the opportunity in India to leapfrog DOCSIS and EOC and other legacy technologies, let me put it. APSFL, for instance, I'm sure you're aware of this. There is Andhra Pradesh state is doing a fiber network, which is supposed to connect every home in AP with a GPON, fiber optic connection going FTTH to every home, right? And that's going to be given out at $3 a month, right? A ridiculously low price, right? So there are lots of initiatives that are happening like that already, right? So I think we are in the throes of this new fixed line revolution that's happening. Jio itself, Aditya will not talk about it too much, but Jio fiber is already there and like I think about 100,000 households across the country already, right? So there's a big story coming out of that too, right? But the big question here is really, what is a killer app that's going to make the fixed line connection work, right? See, you go and think about it. If I go to you, I already have 3 SIMs right now. All those SIMs give me reasonably high speed. If one doesn't, the other 2 will. So I have my broadband. So why should I buy a fixed line connection and pay 1,000 rupees for it? The answer to that is to convert the TV. Because right now, as long as you're on the phone, as long as you're on the tablet, the problem is that I have my mobility connection, that'll work for me, right? The challenge is when I convert to TV, that's when I don't think I can use my connections here. The start point of that is things like Chromecast and other guys that are coming, but the final game has to be, ultimately it will become smart TV, of course, but the final game intermediate will be a box that will take internet and stream everything, the OTT box, so to speak, which will actually be the piece that will work. Because on TVs, we don't substitute TVs like we substitute phones, right? Every 18 months, we change a phone, right? But every 8 years, we change a TV, right? So obviously, that's going to mean that you need to have some intermediary technology that's going to make the story work. And that's where the viability of the game will be tested. To my mind, that's the next revolution that's coming.
Super. Before we speak a little more with the panelists, do you have any questions? Any questions from the audience? Are you sure you're getting a chance? Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions and you people can take down some notes. Okay, so we were discussing something on the spends, right? So let's have a show of hands again. How many of you spend anywhere from less than 200 rupees on your television service, pay TV service every month? This is for India only. So can I have a show of hands of how many of you pay less than 200 rupees in this room? Okay. How many of you pay between 200 and 500 rupees every month for your pay TV service? Okay. How many of you pay more than 500 rupees for your broadband, fixed line broadband every month? Okay. Fine. How many of you pay more than between 100 to 200 rupees for your OTT app on your phone? Anybody pays? Okay, how many of you pay less than 100 rupees for your OTT app? Some of you pay, right? So, how many of you are paying? Okay, how many of you are paying more than 300 rupees for your OTT app on the phone? Wow, so Shishir, you see, the number of people are paying so much more for broadband and OTT, and you people have been fighting for 2 decades for getting the ARPUs of a cable. Where were you? And you're still struggling. All right, perfect. So, just a quick thing about a very interesting point that Aditya had mentioned earlier about search and discoverability. It's not just about content being the king, right? It's about directing a customer to the content they want to see. So, give us a few tips on good UI, UX principles that OTT apps need to have today.
I can only talk about content. I can't talk about the UI, UX.
But you're marketing, right?
Yeah, so marketing. Okay, so so anything that you want to do it in an interesting manner. So I'll give you an example. There was a video that we created some time ago, just as an experiment, and it was a video on smoking, and just a thought process of saying smoking kills. So there was an insight which says every cigarette takes 11 minutes of your time. And we didn't have any money, so I didn't want to use the money, the geo money, and I said, let's as a team create something. So we actually went and figured out who will be the best person, which will make this video viral, and the answer was Sunny Leon. So we went to her and we said, listen, hey, can you feature in this video? And where this man's dream is to spend some time with you, and ultimately he cannot do that because his last cigarette couldn't have allowed him to do that, and she readily agreed. And the video created 5 million views in 3 days organically. So it was just a clever trick, which used the right kind of content with the right cast, and there was no money to seed that kind of content. So I'm not saying money is always the solution. By clever casting, by clever content, by clever usage of subjects, I think you could do the trick as well. So it's as simple as that. There are no rules, there are no formulas, but trial and error, knowing what's happening around you, and understanding your consumer,
And I would say the principal philosophy is 3 E's, which is have content which is exciting, engaging, and at the same time very, very, very entertaining.
Shay, you had some views on that?
Yeah, I'll just add on that I think if we said earlier that the content is king, then I think when it comes to UI and UX, context is king, which is what I want to capture with that is that the idea that you have to recognize the network conditions that exist, the size of the device, the size of the screen. Is this episodic versus non-episodic content? Am I looking at live versus VOD? And too many of the first generation OTT apps don't recognize that, right? So it would be episodic content, but then if I want to watch the next episode, which is what I want to do, then I have to go back 3 clicks to the menu and select the season 2 and whatnot, versus the UI done well. Netflix is actually probably one of the better examples. The next episode automatically comes in, and now they even added the feature to skip the introduction of the next chapter. So like if I'm binge watching, I can go right to the content. The same is true, or maybe the reverse is true. I was actually flying, I wouldn't mention the name of the airline here, and we're watching an in-flight entertainment system, and all the thumbnails get completely squished. And it's obvious to you that they did some distribution deal, that they bought it, but they haven't bought the right metadata, so they don't have the thumbnails in the right sizes, and everything gets completely distorted. So because the content is great, but the context is wrong, and the whole experience really suffers. So context is king in that case.
That's so beautifully put. Karthik, do you want to add to that?
See, we've all been talking in from different angle. See, what I see here is Rajiv spoke about access technologies here. Basically, telco versus cable MSOs, and he also quoted data usage in Hong Kong. I have absolutely no doubt, say by 2020 or 2021, once the cable broadband revolution starts here, we will surpass what Reliance Jio gave us the push by making us the #1 data consumption in wireless. I have no doubt that we would also be the #1 in terms of data consumption on the wired network. We are talking about 400 Gbps, 400 GB in Hong Kong. I would say that we will be in terabytes in India, the way we actually do TV watching. An average TV viewing in an Indian household is not less than 4.5 hours a day. Then convert that into IP, I may not even be surprised, some homes will be in petabytes. So that's on one side on the access technology. On the service provider side, again, telco, cable MSO, wireless or wired. On the content providers, we have the traditional TV stations on the linear, and then we also have the user-generated content for non-linear. So I also see a lot of user-generated content coming on the linear side, which is like live, non-televised events, which will take the main stage on OTT. So they will no more be required to actually have a TV station to provide live streaming. So that will give a lot of choice for content. All this is culminating into OTT apps, and today we have a lot of access devices which are converting a dumb TV into a smart TV, thanks to Fire Sticks or Chromecast. But the underlying thing which is going to connect all these dots, we are talking about TV discovery, right? We will have actually a TV discovery as a main functionality on the middlewares which is going to come up. In any kind of a middleware, TV discovery is now going to be, because I don't see there's a lot of difference with respect to the features and functionalities of the middleware. The middleware 2.0 is going to be about TV discovery. Imagine your smart TV can take multiple HDMI ins, and you have an interface which can intelligently surf based on the content genre and pull out content from every input of yours. That is going to be the feature. So you want to actually search, I come from Chennai, so if you want to search Rajnikant, it can pull out linear as well as non-linear content on Rajnikant, on your TV screen or on your mobile. So that is going to be the, when you talk about hybrid, I am not talking about hybrid with respect to coaxial or IP. I am talking about hybrid with respect to content available from your cable or from internet. That is hybrid to me. That is, I am not talking about hybrid with respect to a form factor of a set-top box. So the choice of content, the more and more the choice of content is going to be, it is actually what Google did to the internet. Today your browser is a search engine. So the same thing will happen for the TV too, is my humble submission.
Perfect. Yes, Rajiv, go ahead.
I want to second what Karthik just said. See, the big difference when you move from a linear TV ecosystem to an on-demand ecosystem is what? Linear TV mein, I decide what you watch, right? If I am the programmer, right? In on-demand, you decide what you watch. My problem suddenly becomes, how do I keep you glued on my app? How do I keep you glued on the TV, right? And the answer to that, in part, is about the kind of things that we can do around the UI. I think that was a question, a very valid question there. But there's a much deeper angle that is coming out there, and that is coming through artificial intelligence. And we've heard of AI, right? And we have talked about algorithms, right? We have built these algorithms, or there are these algorithms that start to show things that matter to you in terms of what content you're watching. Let's say you watch a Shah Rukh Khan movie right now, then logically it will say, ye Shah Rukh Khan ka fan hai, isko aur Shah Rukh Khan ke movies dikha do, right? That's an easy answer to do. But what do you do about that universe of content out there that nobody has watched? Right? So out of 100,000 pieces of content in my platform, I might have only 1,000 pieces of content that are getting watched. What do I do about the other 9,000? That's where deeper algorithmic learning, artificial intelligence learning algorithms actually come into play to start to predict your behavior and say, start watching this kind of stuff, and that works very well. The one platform that does it really brilliantly today is Netflix, right? See, how many of you, I saw some 300, 400 rupee, how many of you are Netflix users here? So you look at your feed and you look at what Netflix recommends, that's where the future is headed. And to me, a lot of that kind of stuff, work that you are doing, for instance, Shay, this is the kind of stuff that I think is the future in terms of the content. That's the end point of UI, by the way.
Super, thanks. Any questions from the audience at this point? Do we give them a round of questions to ask? All right. Let's talk a little bit about targeted advertising. You worked earlier on an IPTV platform, right? And then now, of course, you're powering a lot of OTT platforms as well. How does targeted advertising work? Is it really working well today? And what kind of feature sets does artificial intelligence provide, to enable it?
So it actually relates to the previous subject that we talked about. It's both promotions and advertisement, and it's all based on the data. And I'm coming back to the point of personalization. Vimmi, for example, today already can collect information from both the CDN. So we know what is the consumption areas, what is the habits and patterns of consumption, of course from the backend system, but also we collect for every click and every lingering on a page. We know everything. Everything is recorded and sent to a data warehouse. And with this data warehouse, you can start doing stuff. Okay, so one of the stuff that you can do is like asking, we just launched, for example, as an operator, we just launched a new series or a new season of the series, and now we see that we can create a query asking how many people creating an audience and a bunch of subscribers who watched at least 2 episodes of the new season. And now we have an audience that we can start push things for them. For either it's in terms of promotions, and either it's in terms of advertisements. Because we know things about people who are watching Game of Thrones new season, we can tell something about them already. So everything is there already. The information is there. Artificial intelligence is something that still needs to be developed. It's just at the beginning, but the information is already there. And deep learning, deep learning is a big issue. It's a big thing. But when we will know how to efficiently detect profiles, and this is already happening, then there you go. You already have this as part of the solution.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you for being such a kind audience. I really appreciate it. With this, I think I would like to call it a wrap. And I believe the organizers have a token of appreciation for all my panelists.
Yeah. Thank you so much to all our speakers for their valuable time and remarks. Now I would request Ms. Vidya Subramanian to please hand over the token of appreciation to all the speakers.